Welcome to the position description training. This training will help you understand why an accurate position description is important and give you tips on how to fill out each section of the form. The Classification and Compensation Unit uses position descriptions to determine appropriate classifications. However, there are many other uses of position descriptions. For example, for employee career development, to set performance standards, for writing recruitment announcements, etc. Every employee should be given a copy of the position descriptions at the time of hire in order to know what is expected of him or her. If the job duties change, the position description should be updated to reflect that. Let's start with defining a few main terms we'll be referring to in the next few slides. First of all, position description, or PD for short. It is a statement or set of duties and responsibilities describing a specific position. Here at Multnomah County, we have over 4,000 positions, most of which are uniquely different from one another. Then there are classification specifications, or class specs for short. Each classification specification is a general description of the kind of work performed by employees in that classification. It describes the nature of work, provides examples of work performed, and often identifies the education and/or experience required to perform this work. You can find class specs on the Classification and Compensation website. And finally, job family, which is a grouping of jobs related by common vocations or professions, such as healthcare, administrative, or finance. Building off the definitions we just learned, here are some examples. Office Assistant 2 is an example of a classification. This classification is represented by multiple positions, such as receptionist or file clerk. For example, John works as the front desk receptionist at the health department, and Robin is a file clerk in the Animal Services division. While John and Robin have uniquely different position descriptions, they're both in the same office assistant classification. And here's an example of the healthcare job family, which includes job classifications such as physician, nurse, dentist, and X-ray technician. In turn, each of these classifications contain multiple positions. Now that we define the terms, let's look at the position description form. You may want to have your position description form in front of you, as we'll be going over each section of the form one at a time. Here's a snapshot of section 1. In this section, you will need to fill out the date you completed the form, your department and division names, your current official classification title information, as well as the working title, if you have one, your name, your SAP number and phone number, and your supervisor's name, title, and phone number. Each position has a unique position number that typically starts with 7 and consists of 6 digits. If you don't know your position number or your SAP number, contact your department HR unit. Here's a tip. Working titles can be very helpful in describing what you actually do, but be sure that they make sense. In section 2, you will need to briefly describe the overall purpose of the program, as well as the reason this position exists. Here you can see an example of a position located in the Transportation Division. Please be brief and concise in this section. You will be able to go into more detail about the position in the next section. Section 3 is where you will list the primary functions associated with the position. Essential functions take 10% or more of your time and are related to the job's direct contributions to the work unit's products or services. Include the approximate percentage of time spent on each function over an annual cycle and list them in the descending order of time required. The following definitions will help you determine what information needs to be included in the essential functions section. Imagine you're writing a position description for the receptionist position. What would the essential functions be? Out of the 5 examples of duties you see on the screen, which ones are essential? Answer the phone, greet clients and customers, help decorate the room for a retirement party, record messages for staff, clean break room refrigerator once a month. The correct answers are A, B, and D. Helping decorate a room for a retirement party and cleaning the break room are not considered the essential functions of the receptionist position, and therefore should not be on your position description. Use these tips for describing the essential duties of your position. Be specific, avoid jargon and acronyms, explain technical processes and terms, avoid ambiguous terms, and group similar duties together. And here's a tip for describing the essential functions. Only state what you do rather than how well or how accurately you do the work. For example, you can write, perform on-site inspections rather than accurately and efficiently perform on-site inspections. Section 4 is guidelines. Are there legal guidelines you follow? What are the policies and procedures that direct and shape the work of this position? List any policies, regulations, operating procedures, etc. the position follows to perform the work, and describe how the guidelines apply to your job. Here's an example of guidelines and policies. In section 5, please describe the type of decisions your position routinely makes, who is affected by these decisions, and who reviews these decisions. Section 6 is for your work contacts. Complete this section using the following as guidelines. Who or what functions are regularly contacted? For example, agency providers, schools, other government organizations. Tip: do not list names, only types of services or functions. The board, regional grant auditors, federal compliance agencies. How? Examples: by phone, email, in person, meetings, formal quarterly evaluation reports, etc. What is the purpose of these contacts? To discuss services, clarify client expectations, And finally, how often do you contact them? The Budget Authority section most commonly applies to program managers rather than union represented staff. If this function has authority to appropriate funds and or develop and account for budgets, use section 7A to section 7E to describe the budget managed, to what program areas money is allocated, and the type of funding provided. Some other tips. Annual overall budget calculation, section 7A 3. Annual payroll plus operating budget equals annual overall budget. In 7E, 7E is appropriate for everyone to complete. What is the population this position serves, and how many clients? Note that clients could be external, county residents, or internal employees. Feel free to explain what your numbers represent. Section 8 is where you write name and job title of your supervisor, as well as how often and for what purpose you check in with your supervisor. Section 9 is more appropriate for management employees who supervise other staff. Please provide titles and number of reports of all regular employees. If you supervise on-calls or temporaries, please make a note of it. If the position will not supervise, please mark NA for not applicable. You must make a note if this position is a designated lead over other staff. Section 10 and 11 are related to each other. Check the boxes that best represent the work schedule for this position. Does the position require working non-standard work hours? Section 12 is for the organizational chart. Most people prefer attaching it to the back of the position description form on a separate sheet of paper. It needs to have both names and job classifications in your work group to show the relationship of this position to coworkers, subordinates, and the supervisor. Note that for positions whose classifications may be impacted by reorganizations, both pre-reorganization and post-reorganization structures should be included. If you are a supervisor filling out this form for a vacant position, you may skip this section altogether. If you are filling out this form for yourself, this section is where you write down your own work experience and education as it relates to this position. One common mistake we see is employees fill out this section for an ideal candidate rather than for themselves, or even worse, they cut and paste from a class specification. Section 14 should only be filled out by a supervisor of this position, not the employee. If this position is vacant, what would the minimum classifications be for a successful applicant? And again, please don't just copy the qualifications from the class specification. Filling out a position description form should be a collaborative effort between the supervisor, employee, and the department HR. The signature page represents that all parties have had a chance to review the form and provide feedback to each other if needed. Congratulations, you're done with the form. For most of the employees, filling out this form takes some time. So don't get frustrated with yourself if it takes you a few days of writing and revising it. Should you have any questions, feel free to contact your department HR or one of the class comp analysts for help.